Everybody. I'd like to call to order the October 28th meeting of the District Advisory Council meeting. Our first order of business will be to review and approve the minutes that we are provided. I don't know if everybody saw, Ms. Grimm did provide an updated copy of the minutes with a correction. If people have had an opportunity to look at that, I would certainly be happy to entertain any people that has comments or requests for changes, or if not, a motion to approve.
I'll motion to approve.
Second that.
So that was Mr. Walbart with a motion to approve and Ms. Polero with a second there, Ms. Grimm. And continuing with our practice, all those opposed, kindly unmute yourself and state your opposition. Seeing none, it appears that our minutes were unanimously approved. At this time, we will welcome public comment from any non-DAC members on agenda items that are before us this evening. Do we have any non-DAC members that would like to speak at this time? Seeing none, I believe that takes us to our board update from board member Chris Patrica. I have a lot of names on my screen, but I'm not certain. Is Ms. Patrica with us?
By searching the participants, it looks like she is.
I haven't seen her sign in.
Let me go ahead and I will reach out. I'll reach out to Ms. Patrica, and if you want to go ahead and move on to then the next part of the presentation, and I'll try to get a hold of Ms. Patrica.
All right, and we're going to then, we will move to our Google Classroom presentation and update. It looks like Ms. Candace Olivero is going to kind of take the lead on that. And Ms. Olivero, if you can assist us with introducing whoever will be speaking or assisting with the presentation, I would appreciate that.
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having us tonight. And I am going to look, my screen is now, I'm missing participants. Dr. Bethany Quisenberry is actually going to be starting us off this evening, and I'm looking for her in the participants.
Sure.
There you go. It's up and ready for you to start, Dr. Q, and I will drive for us.
Thank you. Good afternoon. And first, welcome and thank you very much for your participation in DAC and everything that you do for our schools, our students, and our teachers. I'm coming from a parent myself. I am extremely grateful of you taking time away from your families every month to be able to come to these meetings, provide feedback, and then be able to take that back to your schools. So I really wanted to do a big thank you to all of you. So as Candace said, I am Bethany Quisenberry, and I am the director for elementary curriculum and instruction. And then I'm going to introduce my amazing counterpart teams. Lori, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Lori Houchin, and I'm director for middle school curriculum, and I'm happy to be with you tonight. Thank you. And then I'm going to turn it back over to Candace.
And I get to round out our team. I am high school curriculum and instruction. So thank you all again for being here tonight.
So at any point during the presentation, Candace, Lori, and I are going to tag team throughout it. So if you have any questions or comments, please throw them in the chat, and we'll take turns trying to make sure that we answer those questions. After the presentation, if you ever want to reach out and ask any additional questions, you can email or reach out to us anytime. Right now, if you can just take a minute and go into the chat box and type in your expectations or any goals that you might have for tonight's presentation. I'll give you about 2 minutes to do that.
We don't want your broken parts. I've learned to be
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We were reading through all the chats as you guys were typing in, and pretty sure that the majority of your goals and expectations we will cover in our presentation. So first, we want to kind of give some background of where we started. So obviously, everybody knows that we have Lee Home Connect, and have had to switch over to distance learning very quickly due to the pandemic. And so back in August, we developed a Lee Home Connect teacher task force. So we had over 50 teachers, elementary, middle, high, that participated in the task force, and they did some really important work on practices around the areas of instruction, equal access, accountability, and making sure that we developed consistent practices for all of our Lee Home Connect classroom, as well as provided adequate expectations and professional development for our teachers moving into the school year. So this just gives you the timeline. And hold on, this just gives you the timeline of when we first began meeting. So I can't brag enough on this task force. They were outstanding. The way that it was created was through the principals recommended teachers at their school that wanted to volunteer. And so that's how those members were chosen. We also had multiple district staff from all the different departments that were on the committee as well. And so we did a lot of work in a very short amount of time. They were very dedicated, hardworking, and had really great ideas, and we're very positive throughout the entire process. So if you go into our district website, it has our instructional continuity plan that was developed through this task force posted in the website. So this is, are you going to click on it, Candace? This is what was shared with all of our teachers and administrators and trained on. Now, some of these link outs do not work outside of district district employees. But the majority of the things you can go through and read the different processes and instructional practices that the task force created. So we started as a whole group, and then based off of strengths and areas of teaching, we broke into subcommittees. So I'm not going to read them all to you, but we broke into an instruction committee, equal access and supports, and then also accountability, to make sure that we covered as much as possible for every scenario for our teachers to ensure that they were prepared for the Lee Home Connect classrooms. So then we had 2 weeks for training before our students came back this school year, which is unique to other school years. And we developed a list of trainings for our teachers to be able to do at their own pace. So all teachers have different skill sets. So some teachers are very advanced and knew how to use Zoom, knew how to use Nearpod, knew how to use Google Classrooms. They've been using it for years. And so they didn't necessarily need an introductory course. They needed advanced courses. And so we made sure that throughout the trainings that they were able to cater it to their need, their classroom, and their skill set. So when they would go into the website, they could click on any of them. So do you want to click on Google Drive and Google Classroom? There you go. Mm-hmm. And then it took them down to a set of additional trainings that they were able to participate in. And they are still able to participate in any of these trainings. They are ongoing, and we continue to add as the school year goes on. So all of our curriculum teams meet with schools, meet with PLCs and the Lee Home Connect classrooms, the Lee Home Connect teachers, and talk through, we get feedback on what do you need? What do you need additional training on? What do you need additional resources on? And based on that feedback, we add to this training list, and then we also add to our resources. Now I'm going to turn it over to, I think Lori is next.
Thank you. So the next few slides are just some examples of some classroom procedures that we put into place so that we would have some consistency among our schools. And so we're just going to show you a few examples. So this first one is in the continuity plan, and it shows that daily that the students need to participate just as if they were in a brick and mortar school, that they would follow the same schedule. And then we used a lot of icons. So you can see here that the direction to students would be to every day they log into their Google Classroom. And we give more specific directions as we go, but just to show you a few examples. And then some of the supports that we did, as Bethany talked about, we did a lot of trainings. So we had some trainings that were videotaped and recorded so that anytime a teacher changed an instructional model, that they could go back and it would be almost like if they were preparing them for the first day of school. And then we had some that were live and they were very well attended. And on these recorded trainings, we went over things like what should be the naming conventions of your Google Classroom? How do you organize folders? How should you lay out the structure so that students and parents really who are helping their students navigate this can easily access everything that they need to be successful for the day in the classroom. So these are just some of the trainings. There were a lot, and they were very well attended, as I said. And then we also went over daily routines. So what should a student do as soon as it's time for class? And so they enter their Google Classroom before the period begins so that they can acclimate themselves to what the schedule is going to be for the day. That's where they should be receiving the Zoom link. And then to help with attendance, they put their first and last name in the chat box. We always tell them to have their camera on, and then they should be ready to engage and open up like any tools that they'll need for the lesson. So these are just some daily routines that we gave to teachers, but then we also put together presentations that Candace will show you where they could use them for the opening day to train their students as well. And then this slide just talks about the instructional routines and that teachers are going to be following the same scope and sequence. And it points out to them how they should be able to do an interactive agenda every day. So this is going to be where instead of students having to go back into Launchpad to find this application or that application, they put the links in an interactive agenda. And then everything is right there for them for that lesson, for that day. So doing a little front loading on the teacher's part really makes the lesson go a lot smoother. And I'm going to show you some examples of that. So this is a learning grid, and this is for elementary. And it looks a lot different than secondary because in elementary, we're really relying on pictures as cues for where the students are going to click. So, and then in elementary, they're typically with one teacher for all subjects. So you'll see this one is set up for what they're going to do for ELA that day, what they're going to do for math, and what they're going to do for science and social studies. And gives the time. So it's really easy for students to be able to click on that when the teacher says, go to your iReady icon for English language arts, and the student can go right there and they recognize the picture. And it was part of what we taught them in the opening day slides of what those icons mean. And this is a sample virtual agenda for secondary that we put out. And this is also part of the slide from the continuity plan that tells them that they are to click on the agenda. They're going to open up the materials and resources and get everything that they need. If there's a textbook required, to have it ready, to make sure the Chromebook is charged and plugged in, and then they open up the Zoom link on time so that they're counted in attendance for that day. So, and then I think the next slide shows an actual sample agenda. So for one class. And so a teacher might do this by the week, a teacher might do this by the day, but we gave them a sample of what the time slots are, then what they're doing during that time, and then all the links are provided. So it's just one click, easy access for the students. And it really does make the lesson go smoother. We also, did some tutorials for students, not only teachers, but students about how to complete Google assignments, how to turn them in. Sometimes the teachers shoot out the Google assignment directly to each student, and it doesn't require a copy, but sometimes it's just in the agenda and it's required to make a copy. And we wanted teachers to be sure that students knew how to do that and that they were giving the direction for how to do that. And then also submitting assignments. We want to be sure that students are getting credit for their work. And so we wanted them to be sure that they went over with their students how to submit the assignments. We also thought about what happens if Zoom doesn't work. And we actually experienced this on a day that we were videotaping a sample lesson. We actually had students and and the Zoom didn't work that day. And so we do have the platform of Google Meets. And so teachers can quickly put a Google Meet link up, but they need to train students that if the student is not having success accessing that Zoom link, then go back into their agenda, their interactive agenda in their Google Classroom, and there will be directions and a new link will show up for Google Meets. So our task force was really great about helping us solve issues. And then if there is an issue of what if the internet is out in the school, which is a big deal, then through the teachers' phones, they can also then put up what the assignment or what the directions, the alternative directions are going to be for Google Classroom, as well as we asked schools to do a school messenger and or phone calls home to let students know that there is an internet issue. And that does happen from time to time, so that students are not just sitting there and not being able to access their learning. So all of these things were taught to our teachers, and all of these things are supposed to be taught in our classroom so students know what to do.
So now we're going to move into a couple of sample Google Classrooms and best practices that we shared with teachers. So as you heard both Dr. Quisenberry and Lori talk about those expectations for teachers in trying very hard in a district of 96,000 kids, and all of our teachers are using Google Classroom, whether you're Lee Home Connect or face-to-face, as that's our plan. If for some reason a student's not there, we need to make sure we laid out some virtual expectations. And that same teacher task force was very much so, hey, would like something that is consistent for us that we can share and post, and we're all on the same page. So there are two versions of this document that are loading, and these were the virtual classroom expectations that teachers would utilize during the first week with school. And it was just the norms. If you think about the norms for the classrooms, this was that. But it was also the virtual expectations for our families, when we say, what do we need from our families too to help make this a successful environment? So as Dr. Quisenberry mentioned earlier in that continuity guide, there's some links you guys can access, and there's some things that are internal. This is one of those things that was available to everybody. It was very important for us as we went into this to think about what is it we want parents to know as well. And these were some of the pieces of being logged in, having that quiet place. If they're working from home, do they have a space dedicated? And just kind of a reminder to themselves. Muting, we know this is one that we are working on constantly, especially with our youngest learners. The teachers have that icon and they hold it up and remind. Participation. So you'll notice this is the elementary example. And then our secondary example is very similar to it. The icons are just slightly different. In addition to these virtual expectations, what Lori had just shared with you are a process and procedures that we had the opportunity to videotape and actually demonstrate with students to be able to share with teachers before school started. Here are some back to school processes, procedures, and it's laid out for you. So this is a sample welcome back classroom. You can see here the presentation, the way it was laid out was a welcoming back for their students, going over bell schedules, and then reminder of classroom procedures and routines. We take care of attendance and tardies. And then you're going to start to notice down here, those pieces that Lori just mentioned to you were built directly into this teacher's presentation. So they were getting the same exact message. So our Lee Home Connect Task Force took a product, created a product, I should say, put it together, put it out on our web, and then our team worked with teachers to develop, hey, here's presentations. We recorded it, and then we pushed those out. So these were presentations for teachers to be able to utilize those first couple of weeks with their students. Then as we move forward, some of the pieces that the curriculum and instruction team is doing down here is we've set up some model classrooms as well. So we have one here that is an elementary science classroom. It's a home connect, and this is a classroom where our teachers on a weekly basis get an update and an announcement from our science team of how to best support their Lee Home Connect kids. But it's really important to us that it's not just Lee Home Connect. These are the same resources that students face-to-face, the teachers can use in their hybrid classes. So as we try to model best practices of communication, of a weekly communication with our families, we do the same thing with our teachers. So once a week, our teachers from the curriculum department get an announcement in their Google Classroom of, hey, here's a great resource to utilize and to push out to your classes. So this is an example of our elementary science. Here's an example, just so you can kind of see the difference, of a secondary ELA. So same thought process though, they're receiving information here. They've got their stream in their classroom, and it lays out for them. This one is a model classroom. So this one goes over, hey, with the resources we're giving you, here's the best way to lay them out inside your classrooms. So as we look at a couple of classrooms that we have, here's a sample of one of our elementary Google Classrooms that we share as a best practice. And we try very hard with anything we do with teachers as fill their tool belt. So in curriculum, it's that fine balance of the art and science of teaching. Lori, Bethany, and I could all be 7th grade English teachers. And yet if you walked into each one of our classrooms, it's going to look a little different, sound a little different, and the structures are going to be a little different, because that is the art of teaching, where we put ourselves into those classrooms to innovate. So the Google Classroom has really taken over what we think of our traditional classroom. So we push out to teachers best practices. If you'll notice here, this elementary classroom is set up by weeks, and it's archived, so the students and the families have quick access to go back and navigate. And we share that with our teachers of this is a friendly way for students to know where they are getting their work and families to know where they go back. The main week is always the one posted here. So this is a sample of what we share with our some of our teachers. The next one is a sample secondary. So as we talked about those, Zoom's down at the school, my internet's out, now what do we do? One of the other best practices that we shared is it should be an ongoing announcement. So here's a classroom. It's a 7th grade classroom in one of our schools that shows it's posted here, this announcement every single week, and it's the absence or can't connect. So it has logged in what to do next. This is some of our samples that we send out of parent weekly communications. So just like we talked about here in our district, we're very fortunate that we communicate on a daily basis, but with our schools, we try to communicate on that weekly basis and modeling that same thing of, hey, should be communicating with your parents on a weekly basis as well. So this is just a sample of a message that's up and coming for this Friday of how we're trying to communicate with our families. And then in addition to these Google Classrooms, Dr. Quisenberry mentioned early on, we have some teachers that have been using Google Classroom for a very long time, and this was second nature to them. So for those teachers, we have additional tech resources. So you're ready to go above and beyond. These are some of those additional tools that we have in place for our teachers to be able to utilize. Now, as we make this large transition back, and I think that was one of the questions and the expectations, is what are we doing as students are coming back? Well, we know we're sharing best practices, but are they truly being implemented, and how can we do a little bit of a reset? So for Q2 transition, we are putting together a review because it's all the best practices we shared at the beginning of school, but it's time to review and make sure, are we implementing them inside of our face-to-face classrooms, hybrid classrooms, and virtual classrooms. So it'll be a one-stop shop for our teachers. That's a reminder of our attendance policies, those virtual expectations, naming conventions of your Google Classrooms, setting up what to do, those contingency plans for Zoom outages and internets to make sure we're reinforcing all of those pieces that we've shared with you this evening. So we know that was a lot, and there's still a lot of work to be done. So tonight, our question that we're hoping you guys can help us is what additional communication can be established to improve effectiveness? So that's our topic in breakout rooms that we're really hoping to gather your feedback from. And with that being said, we will open it. I will throw it back over to Mr. Hertz. I'm not sure if we have time for any general questions before we do breakout rooms, but that is the end of our official presentation, sir.
You know, I think we do have a few minutes for general questions, and then what we're going to do is before we move to the breakout rooms, we're going to provide an opportunity for Board Member Patrica, who I understand has joined us, to give a board update. If you know how to raise your hands, or Candace, I mean, you're doing a great job moderating this. I'd probably best to leave it to you for how you want people to ask to handle something. If you want someone to put it in the chat and then unmute themselves, we have a lot of folks, so we should probably try to find some way to recognize people before they try to speak, perhaps.
Sure. For those of you that know how to raise your hand, that's a great feature and tool for it. And I took off the presentation so we can see it. And also in the chat, you can put it. I know Lori and Bethany have been typing very quickly in that chat. I'm grateful. I got to drive, so I didn't have to type. Thank you to my colleagues. But you can post it in there too, and we can just answer them out loud.
And I would say, Mr. Hertz, really, we're looking for just general questions, not specific to schools or specific for individuals. Those can be handled in the breakout sessions when we go there in just a moment.
I can't find my hand raising. I can find it when I'm the teacher, but not when I'm the student. So my question that I just put in the chat is that I was not aware that you could sign up for the reading certification for free. So I missed that cutoff, but I would really love to do it, but I don't want to have to pay $200 to do it. So will it ever be offered for free again?
I just answered it in the chat, Rhonda. Sorry, I'm not typing fast enough. I don't, that was a state thing. I don't envision that they would offer it for free again. I mean, maybe they will. However, our district has a grant right now where we're able to reimburse. Joelle McLaughlin is actually the person in PD that is in charge of reading endorsement. So I would encourage you to email her and ask her more questions, because I wouldn't want to tell you wrong.
Thank you so much, because I know I had that question and a couple other teachers had that question. So
Yeah.
Thank you for that communication.
So, Mr. Hertz, to answer your question about assignments in the stream versus that, so in the pre-recorded Google Classrooms and then our live Google Classrooms, Karen Baber, who is our coordinator for instructional technology, what she shares with them is really utilizing the folder structure inside of classwork. And that our best practice we put out is to put it in the classwork and use the folder structure that's there. Not to utilize the stream, because the stream can get very busy and you lose track of who's there. We do show them in the training how you can shut off the stream and also how you can mute in the stream, because we know sometimes, I'll use my child for a moment, he gets overzealous with answering to other students and saying hello and just being chatty, as a third grader can be sometimes. So sometimes I tell him, you can get muted. Your teacher can actually mute you in the stream. So we do share with teachers best practices. Assignments should always go in folders in classwork so everybody can access it all the time. The stream should really be used for quick discussion posts and should be archived or moved down once you're done with it, because it can get long.
Thank you, Candace. So I know, Mr. Hertz, I know we want to stay true to our agenda time, and Ms. Patrica is with us. And so I'd ask for everyone to hold their questions in the chat box. Hold those for your breakout rooms, because you're going to get an opportunity to have a director of curriculum in each of our breakout rooms, as well as the executive director for each of those levels. So you're going to get a chance to really engage in some of those questions too. But I do believe Ms. Patrica is on, and Mr. Hertz, we might be ready for her board update.
That's perfectly acceptable. Ms. Patrica, if you'd like to speak up.
Good evening, Chair Hertz. Good evening, DAC. Chris Patrica here. I'm sorry that I'm not in a place where I can be on video. I think staff stole my thunder a little bit because I was going to talk to you about the number of students that we have coming back face-to-face and the number that we have going to leave virtual. I do want to reiterate something that the superintendent has said repeatedly during public meetings of the board, which is that social distancing is going to be far more difficult with more than 10,000 students returning face-to-face. We will still continue to make best efforts to separate students to the greatest extent possible, but we do have to, continue to rely on the processes that we have in place with the Department of Health to make sure that when cases are identified in classrooms, contact tracing is taking place. I believe that process, from my perspective, has worked incredibly well up to this point. And, before we reopened schools, I said frequently that it was going to be a bumpy start and that we would have cases in schools. And as we see cases rise in our community and we see more children return to our classrooms, I think that there would be an expectation that we might see more cases in our schools as well. I am a parent. I have 4 kids who are in our schools as well. And I know that feeling when you get that notification that a case has been identified in your school. I urge you to continue to, exercise some not patience isn't the right word, but making sure you don't react to that until you're contacted by a member of the Department of Health to tell you that you have to take some proactive measures on behalf of your family. Otherwise, I have been, both as a board member and a parent, very happy with the rollout of education. I look forward to the breakout sessions tonight to hear from you what's working and what's not working so that we can make changes where changes are necessary to make this process even better. And again, I want you to always keep an eye toward the future. When this pandemic is over, what processes that we've put in place, what practices that we've put in place during this pandemic should we continue to use for the betterment of our students and our staff to make our education system even better. Those are my comments for now, Chair Hertz.
Thank you very much, Board Member Patrica. With that, I believe we are ready to move to our breakout sessions. And wonderful Ms. Grimm will start doing that, hopefully with our letters at the end of the names assisting in this process.
Mr. Hertz, I had the team put back on the board up here so we can see. That's really the question we're going to be working with as well. So if you wanted to take a picture of it, write it down. It's one of the pieces that they're really looking input on. So what additional communication can be established or improved can be established to improve effectiveness. So Erica, whenever you're ready to head into a breakout rooms.
Mr. Erickson, which one do you want, elementary or middle?
Middle.
Deshonda, do you want elementary, middle, or high?
High, please.
Well, we could get a breakout report from our elementary school group.
Okay, I was just quickly making notes what we discussed. So thinking about how we're going to build on that communication for the second quarter, some of the issues or questions that came up was really about like missing assignments or assignments being posted in a timely manner for parents to be able to respond to. Maybe there's a science experiment, something that they need, and the parents aren't getting that information in time, and then the students are feeling left behind. And another question is, how are we going to send out communication to the parents that is being generated from the school itself? In Lee Home Connect, those students are missing the announcements from the school. Maybe tryouts are coming up, and there needs to be some communication for kids that are home of kids that are in the school building, that they're all getting the same announcements. And we really talked about how we're going to build on that communication for the parents of what's in the Google Classroom. We just didn't have some kind of continuity amongst all the Google Classrooms and the expectations from teachers of communicating if they're going to the doctor, if they're just not going to show back up on a Zoom meeting and the kids don't know what to do. So really building on that communication, and I think Dr. Q is going to talk about having some of those expectations for the second quarter. And then Dr. Q, really, we had questions about the breakout session and using the breakout session. I know it's different in the secondary schools, but in elementary, we had talked about, we're just all learning how to do this. You really have to use your teacher discretion of how you're going to pull those students into the breakout sessions, if it's going to work for you or not. Like I know for me, so many of my students have terrible Wi-Fi, so when I try to pull them in breakout sessions, they can't hear me, I can't hear them. So it just became too time consuming. I was losing too much instruction time trying to do that. So really, it's based on your population, your school, and your classroom. So we have to use that professionalism for that discretion. And I think that covered everything that we got in there.
If I can throw in one more thing, I think a lot of our, when I'm rereading the notes that I took, that a lot of it boils down to like a lot of parents just kind of want to know what's coming up ahead, having like a calendar, like a generalized calendar, not necessarily something that's strict and rigid by the date, but just kind of a general idea of what they can expect coming up was what a lot of it boiled down to.
Great, thank you very much. And with that, we'll move to our middle school breakout report.
For middle school, we also, to piggyback off of elementary here, did discuss a little bit about the Google Classroom consistencies. So again, just, allowing teachers to still be free to be individual teachers with the art of teaching, but also just how important it is to be setting up similar Google Classrooms for navigation purposes for students and parents with, topics and how you set up assignments and things like that. So we discussed that a little bit. Also, big discussion on communication to parents and just kind of discuss some ideas around that aside from Messenger, but also parents being led to the black hole of information is what I said on the district website, and just being able to navigate that a little bit easier and find quick information that they need to find quickly, so that it just makes it just easier and quicker for everyone to get to what they need to get that way instead of just giving up. Let's see here. And a little on just the difficulties that are happening at home with students not getting the support that they need. A lot of parents are at work, especially for middle school and high school kids, and it's difficult for them. It's difficult for college students to sometimes do online classes, let alone middle and high school kids. So just better and smarter ways for kids to be able to engage and stay focused and things at home too. So what else do we talk about here? Hot topics, maybe a hot topic button on the district website, again, for just quick, easy access to information. And those, I believe, were most of our takeaways. Yes? Yeah.
Thank you. I think that was great. And I'll comment. I see people are putting some stuff that's maybe even kind of good of the order stuff in the chat. And I'm sure Dr. Spiro and Ms. Grimm will capture that and make sure that, in fact, there he goes, responding to folks. So, feel free to keep doing that. Dr. Spiro and his staff are monitoring that, and will be sure that they pick it up and either address it here or add it to the minutes to be addressed. And that takes us to high school.
Okay, the best for last, right? So
Absolutely.
with high school students, some of us parents are receiving an end of week email, and it shows us which assignments our students are missing, and that comes directly from their Google Classrooms, and that is fantastic. But as you know, myself, I have a middle schooler, I don't get that. And that would be very helpful, especially if you have more than one student and you have to log into each child's focus. And sometimes the focus accounts don't reflect all the assignments that are due. So it might look like they're caught up, but they're really not. And then you let them go out or whatever, and then you find out that they're missing assignments or whatever. Someone mentioned that the teacher has to turn it on, and that parents can email the teachers and get the invite link. So that's something that we're going to work on, because I think that would be helpful for all grade levels. And again, we also talked about, if you are a parent with students in different grade levels, elementary, middle, and high school, yes, we expect variety, but there needs to be some consistency for the parents, because we can't ask them to learn Google Classroom 3 different ways. That gets confusing, especially if we want parents to be, participants in their child's education. Let's see. You can also download an app on your phone to access Google Classrooms for your children, along with the Focus app. Let's see. Mike Amabile from Estero High School, he mentioned that he's a principal, and he mentioned that they set it up in a way that's organized for their students. We talked about, they're independent learners. And so the more organized these high school students could be, the better. And that as high school principals, they meet quite often as they can, and they share these best practices. So if a principal sees something that's really working for their students and their teachers and their parents, they're sharing this. They also communicate with parents, several high schools, through weekly newsletters. That also, it's just another communication piece to let parents know what's going on inside the schools. Let's see. There was also some conversations with some of the teachers that we had as representatives about grading, because there's Google Classroom and then Focus. Grading is in two, they described it as a heavier lift this year, and it's something that they're working through, and of course they're doing it. But, again, as a parent, or if for high school students, they might hear like, oh, my assignment hasn't been graded yet, but they're doing the best they can, and they're working on ways to link those to make it faster and more efficient for teachers and students. And then we also talked about what board member Patrica was talking about a little bit with the COVID. We're just curious if there was a breakdown of percentages, or out of the 10,000, how many are returning to high school, middle school, and elementary school. And then we were also talking about when students are pulled from the classroom. One of our teachers from Eastleigh mentioned that she had to make her classroom a blended class, and it actually worked out really well. And she was getting good participation. So that's what I have for high school.
Great, thank you very much. At this time, that would take us to public comment from non-DAC members on non-agenda items. Do we have any non-DAC members in attendance tonight that would like to comment? Seeing none, that takes us to good of the order. Dr. Spiro, do you have any closing comments for us tonight?
I do. First off, I want to say we have looks like 100 participants on here right now. And this meeting, I was just texting Mr. Hertz on the side that said tonight has been marvelous. Very thoughtful questions that you've been asking. The input is exactly what this team is looking for, and even though some of the input does not directly impact us as a team, we will make sure that we pass that input on to those individuals that it impacts. The questions that you put in the chat box, we're going to make sure that we have those in the notes as well, so we're going to try to answer all those questions so they're memorialized, and so when Erica sends those notes back out to you, you'll have those, as well as certainly the questions that you posed in your breakout sessions with each of your executive directors. I want to give a shout out to Erica. Great job getting everybody in and out of the breakout rooms. Not an easy task with 100 people, so great job to you. Really well done. And Mr. Hertz, you facilitated a meeting with over 100 individuals, and so great job to you. And I want to end by thanking my team, Bethany, Lori, and Candace. I want to thank you for putting together just a presentation as a conversation starter, but then really engaging with everybody in meaningful conversation, because that's what this is really about. So I thought it was an awesome night, so thank you.
And I'll take a moment and say that as well. I actually told Dr. Sparrow, Dr. Quisenberry, that your team in particular, and Miss Olivero there, if I said her last name right, you do an excellent job. You guys really set the bar. I'm gonna have to send him a note saying to have you do a little presentation on how to do presentations to DAC, because you really do. You capture the idea of you both give us information, you always have the prompt for the question, and you come very prepared to address those issues. So I think the way you approach it and your willingness makes it very clear you're looking for the two-way communication. Unfortunately, some folks don't. They more want to tell us why they haven't, there's nothing wrong with what they're doing and everything they're doing is great, and that makes it sort of shuts things down. You guys very much welcome it and understand that everybody here really wants to help. And so I think that's really great, and it sets the standard for all of us and what we're trying to accomplish here, that our goal is to help all of our students and staff have the best experience possible, and that's our committee's goal, is to help share that. With that said, it looks like anybody doing good of the order is, let's see, one question. It looks like everybody's raised some issues in chat. I don't know if does anyone else have anything for the good of the order that they would like to speak up on at this time? So unmute yourself and say something.
Again, we'll answer all those in the chat box. We'll memorialize those and make sure that the people responsible for them answer them, so you'll have all those answered.
I just want to say that I hope that we celebrate the fact that we have made it through a quarter of this, and my students, my parents, the grandparents, I hope the district really celebrates. We did it. We're doing it. It's been hard. There's been tears and happiness, but I really feel good inside, and I just wanted to share that, and I hope that everybody shares that with their schools. That's all.
Wonderful. Anyone else? Well, I would entertain a motion to adjourn at this time.
Make a motion to adjourn out of school. Andy Erickson.
Okay. Sure. Go ahead.
A second.
And who was the second?
Ken Ward.
Mr. Waller was the second. Erica's got that. Anyone opposed to adjourning at this time, speak up. Seeing none, thank you very much. And our next meeting is going to be November 18th. Will be our next meeting here. At this time, we'll be via Zoom again. Ms. Graham will be providing links to everyone, and I look forward to seeing everyone November 18th. Have a great night. Thank you.